Welcome back to Tracy and Gracie Becoming. This is episode 33, where we're going to talk about becoming sober-ish.
Yeah, sober-ish.
I'm sober and you're ish.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to describe it.
Yeah, so I think no matter what age you are, I think that this can be a very relevant topic, but I think it's so much more about finding empowerment and a new perspective than it is about trying to like willpower or white knuckle your way through something.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
We thought we'd talk about our journeys that look quite different. But before we do, how has the past week been for you? I feel like I've hardly seen you because you've spent way more time in my car than you have anywhere else.
Yeah, I've been busy recording videos for my social media. And yeah, this week has not been great. The weekend was nice. But the weekend this week we kicked off our week with our hound dog attacking our senile other dog. And that was horrifying.
It was a little traumatic for you.
Yeah, it was horrifying.
I didn't see it happen, but I know you and Dad did, and Dad shared with me all the gory details.
Yeah, basically we ran outside to them. I mean, we could hear it happening, and then we ran outside, and Bixby, our hound dog, was latched onto our other dog's head. It was horrible. So horrible, and it literally shook both of us. Like, our other dog got back up after we got Bixby off of him, but yeah, it was horrible. He put a hole in his neck. He
had to take a trip to the vet.
Yeah.
We can't give him stitches because you can't put him under.
Yeah, because of where he got him, they would have to put him under anesthesia in order to give him stitches. And so they were just saying that it's too risky because he's old and he's sick as is. So they were like, it probably isn't a good idea to do something like that. So now we're being hyper vigilant about his wound, and he's taking antibiotics, and we're trying to keep it clean. But yeah, it has been a week of hell.
Yeah, it's been challenging, to say the least.
Yeah, you can probably hear them running around in the kitchen right now. The weans just don't really even know what to do with themselves because now all 4 dogs are inside. And
it's about ready to drive Dad over the edge. He told me today he is like absolutely had it with dogs. On top of that, I don't even know if you know this. So then last night, Bixby, I had taken all the dogs out and walked around with them. Remington is on a leash. The other 3 are behind an invisible fence. And the weans are still very naive about snow. So their paws start to freeze. They just roll onto their back and they
have no idea. It is the most ridiculous thing you'll ever see in your life. Meatball especially he is such a baby anyways, but when it comes to his paws being cold, he literally flips onto his back and throws them in the air and curls into a ball in the snow. So he can't be unsupervised outside or he would freeze to death.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be a big deal except for the fact that we're on like 1.5 acres and we will be on one side of the yard and this will happen on the other side of the yard.
Yeah.
And we're trying to wrangle 3 other animals while this miniature ween is laying on his back with his paws up in the air. And you're like, oh, good God. Yeah. And then right about the time when you get to him, then the other one does it on the opposite side of the yard.
It's so ridiculous. You would think we're kidding.
Yeah. So it's very frustrating right now. But so anyways, last night, Bixby decides he wants to just sit outside and, I don't know, take in the evening. And so
it's probably because he knows that we're all mad at him.
Yeah, so we all come in, and he literally sits down on the front porch just gazing out. And I'm like, all right, whatever, it's cold. I don't know why you're wanting to sit up here. Next thing we know, he's we hear him barking in the backyard. And so he has an invisible fence collar on that does not let him go from the front to the backyard. So we're like, what the heck? He ran through the line and now is on his freedom tour, barking through the valley, which of course it's echoing like you wouldn't believe.
And if you haven't heard us talk about it before, our neighbors literally hate us because of Bigsby, and so that's where he was barking last night, is probably into their windows.
Yes, and it seemed like it was echoing extra loud, and he is running up and down. I just had this vision of Paul Revere. It was so loud, and Dad was about ready to poke his eyes out. He was just like, I am so sick of dogs right now.
Yeah.
So we let him run for probably about 45 minutes because there's no catching him.
Yeah.
So Dad finally got him back into his kennel, took off his collar, his invisible fence, only to find out the battery is completely dead. Even if you put, it wasn't actually the battery. What we found out is because we changed the battery and it still wasn't working. So yeah, so now we have him on a very short leash because we have no collar to keep him contained. So hopefully Dad was able to make some progress in getting a new collar, because this, trying to keep a, whatever he is, a 100-pound hound dog down is not easy. So
yeah,
that was not a highlight.
Yeah.
And on top of it, it was Dad's birthday, so I felt bad for him. On Monday, it was his birthday. It was Martin Luther King Day, so he always has the day off. Typically, he's up at an ice fishing event, but he came home early.
Yeah.
And we all managed to keep working. And I felt bad in retrospect that we didn't really do more. We ended up going out to dinner and spending the evening with him. And
it was a nice dinner, but yeah, we were all exhausted.
It's a little
just
overshadowed.
Fried. Yeah.
So that was that. But
yeah,
you have been putting in the hours, cranking out these videos. I think they look really good. I've been getting messages from my friends that have seen it saying, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Go Gracie. Mm-hmm. They've got the Gracie fan club going, so it's fun.
Yeah, I've gotten some really sweet messages from my friends too. But they're obligated to say that, so...
Keep them coming.
Yeah.
This is not for the faint of heart. Doing these kind of marketing videos, as they drop me to my knees, I hate it more than anything. So I applaud you, and I very much understand how hard it is, but you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
All right, so if that's not enough to draw you to drink...
No kidding.
All right, let's talk about our journey to sobriety-ish.
Yeah.
What is your, I don't think I've ever asked you this question, but what is your objective with consuming alcohol?
With consuming it or not consuming it?
Well, either one, I guess.
I like the taste of some alcohol. I feel like to drink it casually, I enjoy doing that. I think I'm way past the point now where I can enjoy going out and getting drunk. The consequences for me are so shitty that I just don't really I can't even really get myself to enjoy it anymore. So yeah, I would say, especially the last couple months, I've talked about it a couple times on our podcast, but I've been trying not to drink, and I was probably drink for a month and a half, and it was the best I've ever felt, mentally, emotionally, physically.
So are you noticing that in retrospect, or are you like in the moment when everybody else is drinking and you're out and about and you're not drinking, are you noticing that?
It's funny because I thought that I would notice it more when I was out, how much I didn't enjoy it. I thought that was going to be a really big issue for me, but honestly, it used to be in college. I definitely didn't drink as much as some of my friends maybe when we were out, and that I always felt uncomfortable. not to any fault of their own. It was everything that I was making it mean. And so I think I just would work myself up, and that's why I wouldn't enjoy being out. But I definitely had a different perspective on it this time. I am truly doing this for my own health, and I just don't feel like I need to make excuses for that anymore. And so now, over the past couple months, it's been easy and it's been nice, and I don't really feel like I'm missing out, or like people aren't going to want to be around me if I'm not drinking. My biggest motivators for not drinking right now have been my hormone health, because it's just been all over the board, and I'm really trying to figure it out and get it under control. And I just know that alcohol is a huge trigger for it. So
I mean, it's a toxin.
Yeah.
It's toxic. And so if you're from a metabolic science standpoint, your liver's having to work overdrive in filtering out that toxin. And so it can't do things like help balance hormones when your hormones need to be balanced.
Yeah. And so, and yeah, if any woman listening has ever tried to do this or looked into hormone balancing diets, you know how strict it is, and how basically there's no tolerance for any toxic things that go into your body. Yeah, alcohol has been a really big issue when it comes to this, and I would say after the fact is when I've noticed when I took a break from drinking, or since I've taken a break from drinking, it's been after the fact that I've noticed the hormone benefits of not drinking. Mm-hmm. But in the moment, I think I've been totally fine being out and being sober.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But
I love knowing that you've come to that conclusion and you have that perspective, because I've always worried, oh my gosh, are my kids going to have the same, battle that I had? And I would never wish it on anyone. It was such a struggle for me, and literally one I would not wish on my worst enemy. It's a mind bend. It was way more of an emotional and mental struggle for me than it was anything else, even though I can completely relate to the metabolic side and the hormonal side. It definitely had a lot of consequences outside of mental and emotional, but those were by far the worst for me, the worst consequences. So I'm so glad to hear that you figured it out so much earlier, and hopefully are going to avoid some of the pitfalls.
Yeah, we'll also backtrack by saying I'm definitely sober-ish. I still drink every now and then, but I can tell after I've drank, even just a couple, how much it affects my body at this point. And it's probably become even more hypersensitive to it since I've stopped, like completely stopped, and then easing it back in. I think my body is just not really tolerant to it at all.
Yeah.
So I'm not like completely sober. I still have drinks every now and then, and I'm going out to Austin this weekend to celebrate my friend's 23rd birthday, and I'm going to be drinking, and I also had a conversation with her ahead of time, because I was just like, I don't want you to feel like I don't want to celebrate you. This is part of the thing that I think I struggled with in college, was feeling like I was, and so I think I'm still sensitive to that now, where I feel like I should tell my friends if I'm not going to be fully celebrating, quote unquote, with them for something like their birthday. I mean, my best friend's so awesome, and she was like, are you kidding? I'm gonna drink for both of us, don't even worry about it. I was like, all right. But there have been struggles like that for me with alcohol. I think just because of how bad the side effects are, it hasn't been a struggle to actually give up alcohol. It's more of the social side of it.
Yeah. I can relate to that. And when I had made the decision the first time, and I'll just preference this by saying I tried to get sober 3 times that I can think of, but I'm guessing it was probably more like a half a dozen. They were just probably smaller, more failed, quicker attempts. But 3 really big, long shots. Like I went over a year without drinking, only to pick it back up and immediately was addicted again. That's how much of a hold it had on me. And there aren't a lot of alcohols that I would even say I really truly like the taste of. If I really think about it, I had to acquire the taste of even Chardonnay. And I eventually got to a point where I believed that I liked it and that I liked certain kinds. Honestly, I had to work my way there. I will say the alcohols that I did, or the drinks that I probably still miss, would probably be like a dirty martini, because I really like salt and I like olives. But if I think about some of those drinks and how potent they were, and the very fast side effects, never, ever do I want that again. I can quickly remember why I've made this decision, and I can quickly get right back to, I like my reasons for making this decision. But there are moments where I'll have that little urge. When we went out to dinner with one of my besties and her daughter, who is getting ready to move, and we wanted to just have one last hurrah with her before she moves. And one of them ordered a dirty martini. And I do have that, it would be nice to have that and sip on that over dinner. But that's an old neural pathway. That's an old belief that I used to play over and over. And now I have to remind myself that the only reason why I'm thinking that is because it's such an easy thought to have, because I've thought that so many times. But I today remember that I don't like those consequences. And I would much rather have a morning where I wake up that I actually remember everything, or, I actually get to enjoy the dinner. I don't put all the focus on a drink. I'm actually at a really nice restaurant that I would really love to fully experience. And the conversation. I want to remember everything we talked about. And I want to wake up the next morning and actually have a little bit of drive and ambition for the day, and not feel weighted down. And I would say even more, I don't want to experience the guilt. The shame and the guilt that I would feel, and
the anxiety.
Yeah, I still can't quite reconcile where that comes from. And this is just me being a very honest, transparent person. I'm a life coach, for God's sakes. I help people see their own mind. I help them process their emotions, and I still can't quite put my finger on where the shame comes from when I would wake up in the morning, because thankfully nothing ever, knock on wood, horrible happened, at least that I know of. There was no major rock bottom, no major crisis, thank God. So there isn't anything like that attached to the shame. It was just this self-loathing at a degree that I can't even explain, that I would wake up with. And because I had higher standards for myself. And I think it was just time after time after time of waking up and not remembering, or waking up and not being motivated, or waking up and making an excuse. I would layer on so much hate and so much disappointment and so much self-loathing that I literally couldn't feel that anymore. It was so unbearable. That was the point where I was like, I can't do it. It's just not worth it anymore. And so the time that I finally gave it up was, I've said it a million times on the podcast, how I'm so symbolic. And so it was February 22nd of 2022. So I had 2222. And I was on my way to Florida to rent a condo for a month and work from there. And I knew that the stars were aligning in my favor. I loved the date. I loved the symbolism of it. I was more than ready. And I knew I was getting myself out of an environment that, I guess maybe not out of it. It wasn't a toxic environment, but it was a very routine environment. And I was putting myself into an environment that I could make it anything I wanted because
Yeah.
it was just me. And so I knew that the stars were aligning and it was an opportunity that I could take. And I drove to Florida. And so I also decided that I was going to listen to a recovery podcast for all 30 hours of that drive. So I was very strategic about it, but by the time I got to Florida, I was 100% convinced I would never drink again. It was so like eye-opening to me. I had no idea that there were so many people that had such similar stories. And then there were so many people that had such tragic stories that I could sit and be so grateful that I didn't get to that point. But I could still relate to them on so many levels that having 30 hours of that kind of consistent, I can't even find the words for it, but it was like magical. I was so convinced by the time I got there that I had made the right decision, that I was just ready to start this new life. And it doesn't mean I don't have urges. I definitely do, but I've learned about my brain. I've learned how to navigate those urges. I don't have to react to them. I can just allow them to be there, remind myself about these thoughts that are so like commonly thought by me. They had been thought so many times, very similar to the overeating patterns that I had, that I can almost like make sense of it now. And I don't have to make it mean that I'm broken or I'm a bad person. It's just, nope, that's the way my brain works. And I don't have to react. I can instead just respond and allow it to be there. And that really was the impetus of me starting Self-Made You, was really helping people better understand themselves and learning how to trust themselves. But I'm a student of my own work. Like I just keep using my own work to better my life. So, you know, Self-Made You came before I became sober. I just used my process for something that I never thought I would overcome.
Yeah.
And so I've used it for overeating, I've used it for overdrinking, and I've also used it to build a business. I've used it in relationship issues that I've had. So it really does have unlimited applications, but I have a special place in my heart for people who feel addicted. Obviously, true addiction, there's a chemical component to it, and some people really need more help than what they can do on their own. And to them, I say, seek out help. There is no shame in getting help, because when you are chemically addicted, you need a bigger intervention. But I think if you're not at that point, I think that you should give yourself some space and recognize, where are these urges coming from? What are these thoughts that you're having? Are they even true? Where are they coming from? And really ask yourself, what is it that you want? Do you want to become completely sober, or do you want to be more moderate? And then the second most important question to ask yourself is, why do you want that? Because that is what's going to ground you. That's what's going to motivate you. You've got to like those reasons for why you're making that decision. So those are two very important questions you've got to ask yourself.
Yeah, I think that's probably where a lot of people get stuck, because I'm sure you hear, oh, I'm doing dry January, and then it's like, next week is, never mind, I didn't make it. And I think that a lot of it comes from people thinking that they can just white knuckle their way through something like that. But especially if you're used to drinking often.
If it's become a crutch for you.
Yeah. And not even that. If it's become a crutch, or if whatever your reasoning behind drinking is, because I know I've talked to people that are like, yeah, I want to stop, but it's just the social thing. That's how I hang out with my friends, or it's always around in the house and stuff like that. And that is where it becomes so important to know your why and to stand behind it, because and that's truly why my experience now has been so different from when I was in college, because when I was in college I was still having these symptoms of my hormones not being balanced and just having really bad reactions to alcohol. But I was in an environment where I felt like I had to drink in order to be in that environment, I guess. And I also didn't have a strong why, a reasoning. I didn't make my health my priority over being social and being with my friends, and and avoiding that awkwardness or uncomfortableness of not doing what everybody else is doing. But now, being out of college, where I also work most days, I'm not super tempted. I'm not out all the time, which I think that has helped. Of course, it's made it easier.
I think changing your environment is a really great first step. So I think if you have thoughts like, how am I going to handle the peer pressure? Or how am I going to handle some of the professional events? I know that was huge for me when I still worked in corporate. There's so many social gatherings or parties that you feel like you need to partake in. It's almost like literally part of your job.
Yeah.
You have to have a strong enough why, and you have to be so grounded in that desire that it will actually outweigh the kind of those fears of, is somebody going to think something about me? Is somebody going to say something to me and I'm not going to know how to handle it? Or are they going to think I'm awkward, or I have a problem, or are they going to think I'm pregnant, or all of those, like, those things won't matter as much if you're grounded in why you've made this decision. Yeah. But I also, with that being said, I think that those are very normal thoughts. How am I going to how am I going to deal with the stress from the day when that's all? If it's the only way of coping that you know to use to navigate stress, then it makes perfect sense. That's been your go-to. But there are alternatives, and you can find them. There's alternatives to having any beverage, right? Like, I've said this so many times to my clients. Isn't it interesting how your one person's beverage of choice is an old fashioned, the next person's beverage of choice is a Diet Coke, and the next person's beverage of choice is a glass of Chardonnay. And I personally wouldn't have any thoughts about that whatsoever. Or if somebody was to be given, they ordered a glass of milk and one person got a chocolate milk, the other person got a white milk. Okay, why is that such a big deal?
Yeah, it is interesting to look at it from that perspective. And being on the side that like doesn't drink, of course we jump to that. Why is it such a big deal? I don't care which alcoholic drink you're drinking. Why do you care which non-alcoholic drink I'm drinking? I think it is easier for us to say that, but I think what it is, and I've been on the other side of this too, before I started taking not drinking seriously, there were times where I was out that maybe somebody else wasn't drinking, that I was, why aren't you drinking? Join me. It's a weird thing. It's not misery loves company, but it almost is along the same lines as that. You don't want to feel like the only person that's
being destructive.
I mean, but really think about it, because I have totally been on that side where I'm all what does it say about me if I'm the one drinking and you're not? What does that say about whatever, my tomorrow hangover, when you're gonna be feeling good? It's just a weird human thing that I think we unconsciously do when we think about it, because on our side now, when we're out, we're like, well, why would somebody really even care? I don't care what they're drinking. Why do they care that I'm not drinking alcohol? But I've also been on the other side where I've made those unconscious judgments.
But I just think that at the end of the day, you having this broader perspective now where you can see all sides of it, it informs your decisions going forward. You can now decide to give people who maybe are judging you, you can give them grace because you've had that perspective. You've had that contrast.
Absolutely. It's definitely, I think when I first started to pull away from drinking, I definitely felt that, why can't you just understand? But I definitely do see it now. No, I used to do the exact same thing, and it's so human. And this is in all areas of life. I feel that now too, now that I'm recording videos of myself and posting them for everybody to see and judge. And it's funny, I was talking to a friend last week about it, and I was just, I literally can see the number of people. I actually can see the people that visit my page. It shows me who's visiting my page. So one, I know who's looking at it. Two, and if they're guys per se, obviously you're not coming for my women dating advice. So what the hell are you doing? But I can see the number of people that send my videos around, and my first one was like 100 people. And I was like, literally I want to die. I know probably 99 of those are people making fun of me, and there's probably one rando that was, this is so good. Like sharing it with their other friend that doesn't know me. But that is just, I had to look at that from their side too, because this is so random of me. For anybody that isn't super close to me, they're probably, what the hell is she doing? Literally, what is she doing? So, and I do the exact same thing because I'm human. And if I see people doing something new or random, I have the exact same initial judgments.
Oh so my God, like, I so want to give you a high five right now, because that is so awesome that you can have that perspective, that you can have empathy for even the person, the 99 people that are judging you, and you can actually stay operating from your prodigy brain. Because when you can do that and you can have empathy for yourself and for them, now you're going to be able to be more innovative. You're going to be able to look at all the factors involved. You're going to be able to navigate this through your values. It's, you want to know who's going to win this? You. For sure. Because you're doing it for, A, you're doing it for the right reasons. B, you have made the decision why you're doing it. You love your reason. You are strengthening every single day. You're putting yourself, you're lifting the heavy weights of putting yourself out there. So you're strengthening that prodigy brain so that you're going to be unstoppable. Seriously. And the judge, let them judge. Right? I'm sorry, hurt people are going to hurt people.
And it's not, and I do think that, but I also think that most of the time it's literally not even that. I think, especially when it comes to these videos, there probably are people that are just being mean and sending them around. But there's also probably people that they're not even doing it really to be mean. It's probably just an instinct thing to be like, literally, what is she doing? Sending it to somebody being, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah. But I think it's cool because you have the bigger perspective around, I've been able to bring you into this business. And so you have such a broad perspective on how impactful this work is. This doesn't just change one woman's life. This changes all the lives that she touches. So the exponential effect that happens based on the video that you're recording, even though it feels so awkward and so embarrassing and uncomfortable, it's so unbelievably impactful. And then we have no idea. We can't even begin to imagine what this will create.
Yeah.
But it absolutely will. And I do think that people your age, it's unusual for somebody your age to be bold enough to stand out there to give advice that you are very convicted in, and to want to help people at this level. That is unusual. I think that the people who are captivated by it, let's just say that, you can understand why. And they're probably deep down, there's a part of them that is, they wish that they had that same kind of courage, because that's what it takes. It takes a shit ton of courage to do what you're doing.
Yeah. We all have primitive brains, and usually there's not a malicious intent behind stuff like that.
Right.
So you just have to keep that in mind when it comes to worrying about what other people think. Even if they are judging you, most of the time it's really not like with the means to hurt you or whatever.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So I thought, the reason why I thought this would be a great topic, I just wrote a blog on Dry January, so we'll link that. I did not know that Dry January started in the UK. Did you know that?
No, but Brits are so fun that of course they started that.
Yeah, it's and then it's moved to the United States and has become, I think that the participation in Dry January has increased significantly.
Yeah, I feel like it is. We are in a trendy state right now with people just starting to move away from alcohol or doing more things like Dry January.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You can see like the non-alcoholic beverages.
Oh yeah, like mocktails everywhere now.
Yes, that market is booming.
Yeah, for sure.
We have a friend who is marketer, distributor for Clarity.
Yeah, which is right. It's not alcoholic, but
no, they call it an alcohol alternative.
Yeah,
but
it's THC water.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not really being sober.
THC water, that's what you would call it? I would call it a seltzer. But it doesn't have alcohol.
THC seltzer.
Yeah, it doesn't have alcohol in it, it's interesting because I was just interviewed on a podcast. Oh, do you remember the name of it? Fuzzy-ish, I think is the name.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was I actually think they're still in advertising, but they're former advertising executives in more of a corporate setting. And now they do advertising, I think, as entrepreneurs. But anyways, they started this podcast called Fuzzy-ish, and it's all about their journey to sobriety. But before we started the recording, they wanted me to know that they are users of THC and I can't remember exactly, cannabis, I think is how he said it. And I was like, okay. I felt like he was making some confessional or something.
Because when you say sober and then you still use drugs, it's not technically really being sober.
Yeah.
So I think people sometimes feel the need to clarify that.
Explain.
But that's also like, people call that California sober. Like.
Oh, funny. I've never heard that.
Really? Yeah. So a lot of people in California, because it's a huge state for legalized marijuana. Yeah, they go California sober, so they stop drinking alcohol and move on to weed.
I would highly recommend, just before doing anything, before taking action, really sit with your thoughts and ask yourself, what are the reasons why? Do it from a place of discernment. Try to stay out of judgment. I know that's so much easier said than done, but really weigh out the reasons. Like, is it a financial reason? Is it a relationship reason? Is it a health reason? Why do you want to explore that world? And then, make a list of all the reasons why you like that decision, to get curious about your sobriety or what could possibly be. And then I think, secondly, only because this was what really worked well for me, is become very aware of your environment.
Yeah.
If there is patterns in your week where every single Tuesday night is happy hour with the same crew, and that's going to be a huge obstacle for you, don't go.
Yeah.
I tell my clients all the time, we have to look at the obstacles ahead and make a decision ahead of time about how we're going to handle that obstacle. And it's not just the obstacles that are in our mind. Sometimes they're very tangible, they're very physical, like an invitation to a happy hour. If you're wanting to make different decisions, there's no shame in saying, no, thank you. I'm not going to come this time.
Yeah. And finding other like social outings. It's hard to believe, but there are plenty of social outings that don't have to involve alcohol if you're looking for them.
Yeah.
It's not to say that you can't ever be out with your friends that are drinking and still enjoy it. But when you're starting out, don't make it hard on yourself.
Yeah. At the same time that I was becoming sober, I was also really working on my weight. But I'll tell you what, when I would go out with girlfriends and more of a happy hour or out to dinner, where I would be thinking is like, what's the dessert on the menu that I'm just dying to have? I wanted to make sure I wasn't coming from a place of restriction and deprivation. So I really started fixating on what can I have? And I wasn't a huge Diet Coke drinker at the time, too. Because I was working on my health, I had eliminated that. But that was more of a treat for me. So I would say desserts increased, and my pop drinking increased.
Yeah, which arguably isn't great either.
No, it's not, but you pick your poison.
Yeah, basically.
Literally.
Basically.
Yeah, and then it is always same thing with in our weight loss program, we're telling people find the alternatives to sugar and flour. There's also alternatives to alcohol, and there's also alternatives to some of the activities that are surrounding alcohol consumption. Shift from happy hours to coffee dates, or shift from a happy hour or a bar meetup to going on a walk. Right? There's just so many things that you can discover when you really start surveying all of the factors that may be involved. But when you have your blinders on and you're so laser focused on with this black and white thinking of this or nothing, it's going to make it so much harder on you. So those are my tips.
Yeah. All
right. You have a great time in Texas. Getting up very early to take you to the airport tomorrow morning.
Yep. I will be staying up to edit this pod and then probably trying to get it up tomorrow while I'm at the airport.
Awesome. All right. We will see you guys next week. Thanks again for listening.